Coming up in this episode.
You're born an original, don't die a copy of everybody else. And I don't want to be a copy of everybody else. It goes against my nature, and everybody else listening should feel the same way. You want to be who you are. And part of who you are is a process of discovery. So if you have all these systems in place blocking you from hitting those processes of discovery and self-actualization, then yeah, you're a slave and you're never going to rise to the potential that you have. That's why I have such an irk with these types of ideologies. They're trying to bring out the worst and they're trying to devolve, man.
You are now listening to the Here for the Truth podcast, hosted by Joel Rafidi and Yerasimos.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Here for the Truth podcast. I'm Joel Rafidi, got my co-host Yerasimos with me as always. We are fresh off an adventure to Bandera, Texas, attending the Confluence Festival. Had an amazing time connecting with amazing people, getting to meet many of our listeners, host a workshop. I got to perform out with Scorpio and some other older songs as well. It was just incredible. So really just shout out to Alec, Mike, Lindsay, Molly, and the entire Confluence team for hosting such an incredible event for sure.
I mean, I agree, man. There's not much more I could say. It's my third Confluence. I love that event. You know, these types of events, Music in the Sky, Confluence, they're incredible. We come together, we honor each other. We get deep, we learn, we laugh, we eat amazing, healthy food. We spend time in nature. And, I think it's incredible. And I look forward to more of these types of events popping up around the world.
Yeah, totally. So leading up to the time when we were due to record this podcast, I had a power outage in my home in San Miguel de Allende. So I had to, in the last minute, find a co-working space to jump into. So didn't have my usual mic on me. I had a couple of internet issues throughout this, but I don't think it affected the quality too much. Just want to keep it real with you guys as always. David Whitehead is here today, just being David Whitehead, which, other words, absolute legend, just diving deep, debunking, cutting away debris, getting to the core of very important topics such as money, individualism, capitalism, heroism, self-esteem, greatness, the things that really matter. This entire conversation just encapsulates the entire wheelhouse of what we are here for the truth, really advocate for. And this is an absolute masterclass. You could listen to this podcast, and if you really connect the dots, take away the treasure, it will change your life. It will change your mind. It will change your thinking. It will change how you approach reality. So, let's put in our student hats for this one and just witness greatness as David does his thing. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Here for the Truth podcast. Today, we have the return of a guest that I guess our audience is very familiar with at this point, hopefully. If not, I definitely recommend you check out all his previous episodes. They are all absolute bangers. The Kingdom of Heaven Within, particularly, I think was the most popular episode of last year on Spotify. So that was incredible as well. David, great to see you again, man.
Hey, how's it going, Joel? You're Yerasimos. Good to see you, boys. Thanks for having me back.
Of course, man. Of course. Well, I think this is number 10. I don't know. I'm losing track of the times you've
Nice.
come on the podcast, man. So you're definitely one of our audience favorites, and we just always appreciate everything you have to say and everything you have to offer and the work that you do in the world. But beyond that, man, just who you are as a man and who you are as a person. And I think that's the most important thing.
Oh, you're too kind, man. Feel the same way about you guys.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's been such a trip, we're just talking about it, but also just recollecting the journey of the last 4 years. Like, I remember when we first even agreed to start a podcast, you were the first person we reached out to give us the 101 of what that even looks like. And you told us the distributor to get, the mic to get.
We got my mic still.
Which Yerasimos is still rocking. I remember you invited me on my first ever live podcast, and I was nervous as all hell doing that. I think I even mentioned it within the first 10 seconds. I was completely buckled. But considering all things and the way of things have evolved, it's just really incredible, when you're consistent, when you develop authentic self-esteem, when you walk the authentic path, how life just transforms in the most magical ways,
Absolutely. Yeah. Like I'm so happy to see what you guys have created out of that. And I was just like you. I didn't know how to do any of this stuff. I still feel like I'm learning because they change everything every week now. Like you gotta get up with the new thing. And that's difficult. I already feel old. I'm like, what? You guys are on a different platform that I've never even heard of before. And there's new technology I've never heard of before. But it's what it's all about is at least we have this vehicle, at least we have this ability to get on here and have these conversations. And thank goodness it's benefiting people. And that's all I've ever tried to do was get out and in the work I did starting my podcast, I've done every variation of video logging and podcasting that I can think of. And I always just did it because, first of all, I enjoyed it. Sometimes there was parts of it I didn't like, all the production work, all the trolls, all the, doing anything public is always challenging. But you find out you get a lot of support as well. And also I find I get a lot of really good research coming from people that tune into the show, and we exchange information. I've been contacted by some pretty incredible people, and I'm sure you guys have the same stories. Learned so much. And so basically I just feel honored to be able to be in this position where I can do research like this. I can contact authors of books and people that share amazing ideas and get it out there. And I'm just glad to see I get so much overwhelming positive feedback. And I know you guys do also, and that's huge. So that's what it's all about.
Well,
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Like, we do the work that we do. We have a platform, and sometimes I forget. Like, I forget I'm sitting here, like, in my room, getting on a mic and talking with Joel and a guest yourself, and then it goes out to like thousands of people that sit there and listen and are inspired and continue on their journey, and then reach out to you and tell you, "Hey, I just found your podcast and I just binge watched every episode for the last 4 months," and you're like, "Wait, what?" Which is in some way like when I first came across Unslaved. I knew about Michael's work. I think I may have known about you. I'm not sure. But then once Unslaved started, it was just like, how can I not listen to this? And I think it's so important too with people that, do their work in the world is not forget where they came from. And so this is why Joel and I always tell our origin story. And I will continue saying it, even though I've probably said it to you on this podcast, but just a thank you to you and Michael. We all stand on the shoulders of giants. And this is how, I feel about the two of you, and to come across the two of you in your work at a time in my life where I was hungry and thirsty for knowledge and inspiration, was life-changing. And I don't think I would be who I am today without you and Michael, man. It's just real, and so I'm so grateful.
Oh, bro, that's awesome. I appreciate it. And I got my people, Michael's one of them. I got many people to thank for what I've been able to do in my life. And it's just when you follow that calling, and you follow your curiosity, and you follow the basically the things that drive you, the questions that drive you. That's what it was for me. Was I got questions. I want to know what's going on. I think conversations on the internet don't just have to be about what you should be eating for dinner, or just really, that's cool, but you got to go into something deeper. I love exploring the mysteries of the universe, the mysteries of who we are, why we're here, where we're going, what the hell's going on in this crazy world. It's also, it's one of the greatest times to be alive, if you think about it, that we have these mediums. Like, our forefathers didn't have access to communication on this scale. It's incredible. I'm seeing it in all these other fields. Like, I'm in the martial art field really heavy right now because I have my martial arts school, and I'm pretty much hitting that full time. I'm training all the time. I'm teaching all the time. I just finished coaching this massive tournament. We had like 45 people registered for this tournament. Most of them were kids. So I'm coaching that. Next week, go to Vancouver. I'm cornering some guy in a Muay Thai fight, and then back. And now I got another tournament next week. So like, but what I'm bringing that up for is that in the martial art world, I'm seeing the same thing, where it used to be that everything was hearsay, everything was mystical. There was always that mysterious sensei in the woods you had to go find for this hidden knowledge. Now there's no hidden knowledge. It's just all out there. You can get coaching from the best coaches in the world. You can watch the best athletes in the world. You can learn so much. And it's the same in this field. So the fact that someone like Michael was able to go through basically the Library of Alexandria of the Western history and pull out a lot of gems that most scholars and people that just go to university to study philosophy or history or any of these subjects, they're never even going to hear of, and find these brilliant thinkers that contributed greatly to the archive of knowledge that we have, and feature that, and there's been many others that have done it as well, although Michael has to be one of the more unique ones, let's be honest here. Which is why I still partnered with them and just love doing Unslaved. I mean, I'm honored to be there doing that too. I still binge watch Unslaved also. I learned so much. But I'm just saying, like, incredible that we have the technology, we have the will. There's people are hungry for this kind of information. They want to know about what's going on in the world. They want to know about the mysteries of life, and that's really what it's all about. And so, we have this ability to communicate this information, give it to people in a digestible way, and then share knowledge. It's a massive information sharing network. Now, there's cons to this because now everybody and their grandma has a podium, and it can kind of muddy the water a little bit. But I'd almost rather this than the way it was, where it was just like this strict, like there was like these priestarchies and these, officials, and it was all the experts, like who were the only ones that had a voice in the room. And now everybody has a say. And of course, there is pros and cons, but if you find the quality out there, you find the people that really have the gems, you'd be amazed what you can discover without having to just go attend some university. The university is online right now. You can learn any subject you want from the best people in the world, and you get caught up to speed real quick. And so I'm just grateful we're in this time, because we've been around a while, and before we had this ability, it was very hard to get a hold of it. The guys that we reference in our work here on all these subjects, they had to be the ones going into those libraries and getting out the microfilm and scanning newspaper articles and just like the hard groundwork that was done in order to produce good journalism and good reporting and good research. Today, it's made infinitely easier. So I expect to see an explosion of more content like this and more curious minds going out and getting involved and finding some great mysteries and bringing it to the world. And I think it's a great time to see this happen.
Yeah. There's like no excuse, I feel like, these days to like not go after the things you want to go after and be the person you want to be. There's just so much access. It comes down to, again, I think maybe some things we'll talk about here today, but like, what do you really want? Who you really are? What's your level of self-esteem? How much desire do you have, to change your life? It's a lot easier now, I think, than it maybe was, 50, 60, 100 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was always like, I used to love just going into these bookstores and grabbing these books and learning it. I did it with my martial arts career. I did it with this. And, it's a sacred journey that's very personal to me. And I'm sure everybody listening knows what I'm talking about. We all share this journey, especially if you do public work. But there's a very private space for myself as well that I always try to hold, keep everybody off and just be like, no, this is just for me. But what I've learned is that you have the ability to, if you have the ability to communicate, and you can even just, do some basic investigation into your ideas, you can at least start the journey. And I think a lot of people are just afraid to start. It was like when you guys started out, I'm sure you were kind of like, oh my God, what mic do I get? What do I do? How does this work? Are people even going to listen? Are they going to care? Do I even know what I'm talking about? Am I going to fumble in front of that big guest that I booked? We all, people that create public work, you get all those things that kind of cloud your mind and they can throw you off. And a lot of people don't continue, so people get into it for a weekend and then it's over and they don't want to go to the next level. So hats off to you guys for just continuing on and forging through. And the thing is you get better at it. And when you get better at it, you do better work, and then you're inspired to do better work, and it incentivizes you to do your best. And if you keep that motto of like, keep that curiosity, keep trying to bring your best forward, people will resonate with it, especially if you've got like something really legitimate to say and you've got some facts to show people, and some inspiring things to teach people. And also when you go at it as a student, this is what I've tried to keep in my mind, is keep that white belt mindset always, right? As much as we get into our crystallized beliefs and theories and ways of looking at things, you got to appreciate everybody's point of view and learn from many teachers, and just stay humble in your pursuit. And if you keep those basic rules, for myself, I find that it enhances both the work you're doing for the public, but more importantly, it's like you're going to have that confidence in yourself and in the way you're approaching these subjects and the way you're approaching your own forging of your own life. You're going to develop that. And that's going to be part of that personal side that, you're going to be forging for yourself. And so it's inner work as you explore the outer world. And I think that's a magical thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like the self-reciprocal nature of, self-esteem. If you take any of Nathaniel Brennan's pillars, whether it's consciousness, integrity, purposefulness, whatever it might be, like the more you live with consciousness, the more self-esteem you get, the more self-esteem you get, the more you want to live more consciously, you know? So once you're kind of on that wheel, it kind of self-fuels and self-feeds itself. And I mean, you can continue to rise forever. And this is kind of the beauty of, you know, what the West has built in many ways, which is kind of the crux of what I want to get into here, because for the first time in human history, with, I guess, the rise of Western values, Western traditions, man's mind was kind of unshackled in a sense. He was free to think, free to innovate, free to go his own way, free to build. Value was created through man's mind, through man's effort, and not purely through coercion, force, pharaohs, emperors, whatever it might be. So do you kind of want to speak into the current misconceptions or the widespread misconceptions that we have around capitalism currently and in recent history? Then maybe we can start picking apart from there what value really is, what money really is, and what it really means to be a self-responsible human being.
Yeah, this is important. I'm glad we wanted to do this. I think this was inspired. I put out a tweet because I saw a meme going around about.
Should I read the meme? I'll read the meme. The meme.
Oh, sure. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, we'll put some context.
Yeah, it was a meme, and like the picture is like, you know, maybe a Native American, you know, lady, and she's saying, "Nature gives us everything for free. Nature doesn't charge us any money. All nature asks of us is that we protect it." And you kind of went in and decided to debunk that.
Yeah, and I can't remember how I phrased it, but I thought deeply about it because I wanted to hit this meme because I'm seeing this refrain rising up again, and it's not a shock to me. And I understand where people are coming from with this. Okay, so there's like the general impression of what this person is saying, and then there's the details that we got to get into on this, and the fact that that's a lie. There's nothing free that nature offers you in that regard, and there's a reason why, and it's not because nature is trying to hold you prisoner or anything like that. And I think there's this concept really hit me when Michael started talking about something called an antipathy to nature. And he'd said this many times, and I looked it up. Antipathy, you know, meaning like almost like an allergic reaction, or like, you know, recoiling in horror, or having like an aversion to it. And you're like, what man has an aversion, antipathy to nature? And then he was getting into all the psychoanalysts and the psychologists and the philosophers that were pointing this out in the human being and going, isn't it interesting that all the rest of nature works very much in harmony with nature, and just kind of every species and form of nature, expression of nature, just works within its own natural order. But humans are the ones that have this thing where we can walk outside of that, and we can actually work against our own nature. And we tend to do that. And we tend to develop things like self-hatred or misosophy, you know, hatred of knowledge and wisdom. We're riddled with fear and anxiety. You know, do you think tigers and lions and polar bears and zebras are riddled with anxiety? You know, no. But they can't, you know, contemplate their own existence to the same degree. So I guess it's part and parcel. But I always found it interesting when he's like, that's an antipathy to nature. I'm like, what is that? And so in one sense, you know, I understand what that meme is talking about, with in comparison to the material world that we've built, this corporatist, elitist, you know, globalist type of system of consumption and all that. You know, you get that and you go, okay. But it gets really tricky when you get into the weeds here, because you got to realize that like some of the biggest dictatorships in history have been built out of that premise, right? And people don't understand how this keeps happening. And I think it's because it's actually defying a natural law to view, and we'll just flesh this out a little bit. If they're saying nature doesn't charge you money, it shows how far we've come from understanding what money was to begin with, right? And yes, our money system and the capitalist Western system has become corrupted, okay? So when you're arguing, often we're arguing a straw man when we're talking about pro-Western values, the values of individualism, freedom, true capitalism, the philosophy of trade, fair trade between individuals as opposed to having coercive forces and all these different things, not being ruled by the whim of the crowd or the tribe or the mob of people around you. This is all very new in human thinking. So it doesn't surprise me that Aboriginal, indigenous tribes and whatnot have this view. Okay, it's essentially the Rousseauan view. If you go to Jean-Jacques Rousseau, it's the whole myth of the noble savage thing. We've done a lot of this stuff on Unslaved, taking it apart. People like Ayn Rand have taken this apart, and many others as well. But it's basically the misconception about what nature really is. It's like, okay, well, we have the natural world that gives you everything for free, this person is saying. But it's not free. Just because I don't have a unit of exchange pre the Industrial Revolution or pre the invention of a monetary system, especially like a free market monetary system, doesn't mean I'm not charged every second of every day by nature should I not obey nature's laws, right? The nature's laws are that as a human being, I have to eat at least 3 times a day. I need to sleep at least 8 to 10 hours a day. And nobody really sleeps that much anymore. There's certain requirements that we have, just like plants and trees, they all have requirements for survival. So nature puts a tax on you right away and it's clicking, right? And the cost is you have to be able to develop skills in order to navigate nature, in order to survive the natural elements. If you don't develop those skills, nature will mercilessly deal with you. Doesn't care. No feeling. No, it's nothing personal. It's just a way of things.
Let me, before we go deeper, let me ask you, like, how do you consider nature, like in terms of benevolent, malevolent, neutral? Like, what's your perspective of nature in that sense?
Oh, everything, all of it, everything. It's dual. There's the schools that like the hippy dippies, nature's just love and light and the mother goddess and, it's just all happy ponies and rainbows until the tiger's crawling up your ass, right? Or the earth opens up and swallows entire villages, with earthquakes and tsunamis and volcanoes. And then there's the other side that's like, well, no, nature's just completely malevolent, like sort of like the religious perspective. Nature's cursed. It's a fallen world. It's, your body's a prison for your soul. And we're all prisoners here on this rock. And we're just, held by some tyrannical natural order that's trying to lead you astray. It's controlled by the devil, mind you. So, everything nature's trying to offer you is all demonic and evil. And so there's like these extremes. It's all the things. It's every, like, just as humans are all those things, right? We've seen the expressions of the worst of humanity. We've seen the expressions of the best of humanity and everything in between. We see the same thing when it comes to the natural order. So to me, it's not a mystery. So I look at it, nature is just a canvas. It's neutral. It's a artistic palette, really. And there's laws. There's laws that are in place that govern the natural world. Who put them there, how people want to conceive that, that's totally up to them. There's a bazillion theories on that. But just simple observation, right? Just kind of getting back to this, like, what is value? What does it mean to have a cost or a price on something? Look, if you're in hunter-gatherer societies, because it seems like we're in this age where people just want to run back to hunter-gatherer societies again. They don't want to have modern civilization. They don't want man to traverse the stars. They don't want to. It's this fear that humans have of like evolving and really progressing forward. And other people might argue, oh, is it really progress that man wants to keep creating all these trinkets and toys and keep building? But I think there's nuance in all these things. But the main thing is to understand that if you do not develop the skills to survive in a hunter-gatherer society or in that kind of situation, and you don't measure up to that, you're swiftly dealt with in the natural order, right? Any species that can't defend itself against a more predatory species will be wiped out and gone extinct. It's just the way it goes. And so does that mean it's evil? Does that mean nature's evil because, these are the mechanisms at play? Well, no, we see both yin and yang in nature, right? We see beauty, we see destruction, so it's a dualism that we're seeing. And I think this goes across all the scales of reality. And so we are finding ourselves sort of thrown into this world in a way where we have to survive, and then we have to survive the time in which we live. And the idea of going out into nature and making something out of nothing, I use that sort of generally because obviously everything in nature is not nothing, but like nothing in terms of value for the human being. Like a tree is just there. It's beautiful. It's something that, or any aspect of nature is definitely aesthetically beautiful. And But
something in its raw form that hasn't yet been transformed by the human mind to have a greater value, to have a greater benefit for our use.
Well, you just said it better. That's exactly what you said better than I could have. That's exactly it. It's like it's in its natural form, and that is stunningly beautiful. And much of nature should be left in that condition. But for human survival, and not only survival, but to thrive and grow and build even more, there's certain conditions that have been placed upon us. So I think what the original idea of a monetary system was simply to represent the natural order, but in a way that would be a lot more feasible for human affairs, right? Because there's like nature's affairs and then there's human affairs. And in human affairs, we're trading goods and services and knowledge and technology and ideas and all these different things. And it takes work and ingenuity and a hell of a lot of sacrifices for people to develop those skills and to develop the ability to turn nothing into something that previously didn't have a lot of value to the human being into something that does. You take a piece of wood, you turn it into a rocking chair, right? Something very simple. And there's so many examples of this. And so even though obviously there's pitfalls along the way, no matter what type of system we put in place to try to mirror that, and yes, we've definitely strayed away in many ways in terms of modern civilization, but that's not the argument to destroy it all. And this is where the Marxist argument comes in, which is essentially the argument that's being given with that meme, if you really know how to decode it, is that we just have to go back to, like, regress back to the trees, regress back to this primitive state in order to finally be in balance with nature. This is actually the core of what's going on with the UN ideology and the Club of Rome and the Green New Deal stuff and what's behind the green mask. This whole going back to nature, it's not what people think it is, right? It's sort of a false advertisement because it's coming from, I think, an inorganic or inauthentic place.
There's also a naivete, like we're just gonna walk out in nature and then like the Garden of Eden is just gonna be everywhere there for us, like feeding us. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As opposed to like, we don't have to do anything to make that happen. I mean, how many stories do we see of people who, were going for a lovely little hike and then got lost, and then like 15 days later, they were found almost dead, because they don't have the ability or the skills or the understanding to even survive or like understand nature to that degree.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. Yeah.
And it's interesting because like it seems like very early in people's quote unquote truth seeking journey, they believe the major conspiracy and the major enslavement is that humans have to work.
Yeah.
Okay. And that in the ideal utopic society that we would just, everything is available for everyone. We can just, sing Kumbaya, hold hands, do hula hoops, swing on the swings, and like everything will be given to us will be constantly fed. And there'd be no reason to produce, no reason to think, no reason to activate these skills and abilities, which are gifts, in my opinion.
Regression to the womb. Just take care of me and feed me.
Yeah.
Now, a short break from the episode.
For those of you that read my article, The New Community, honoring individuals and building together, you'll understand like where we're moving forward as community, where we honor the individual, we honor each other's uniqueness, and then we come together there. So again, like we mentioned in the beginning, we had an amazing time at Confluence. Events like that are propping up everywhere to meet in person, where we're not meeting, we're not meeting based on coercion. We're meeting based on shared values. And so the next best thing is being able to connect with people all around the world online. And it's what we've created with Friends of the Truth. We've been going on, I guess, 3 years now with that community. So if you want to come together, have a laugh, learn, be inspired, go to hereforthetruth.com/FOTT and learn all about it. We have 5 calls a month. We have an incredible Telegram group with like 30 subtopics where we engage in a whole bunch of different conversations. And one of my favorite things is that we just have fun and we laugh and we connect. And so if that's what you're looking for, come check us out.
hereforthetruth.com/FOTT.
Back to the episode.
That's it, man. You guys have got it. That is it. It's wanting that nanny state. And if you couldn't get it from your government, you now want to get rid of all modern civilization and go back to pre-electricity era and have nature become your parent again. And nature is already your parent, no matter what you're going to think about it. And it's not, there's an idealized sort of magical child thinking that I see in the way people view nature, and especially people that live in, like, you know, high society. It's so funny that these arguments for these types of ideologies come from people living in modern societies. And so, yeah, you're right. The thing is you are charged every day to go out and produce something, or you're not going to survive, right? So that alone is already a principle that's there. And people have this illusion that if we just get rid of all of our capitalist systems and all the civilization we've created and get rid of all the buildings and just go back to the trees again, that somehow that system of demand upon you as an individual is just going to stop. Newsflash, it ain't. It's going to be really, really bad. I think if we had time travel available to us, that we would go back and we would realize very quickly how good we have it. And I think that's the problem of every generation, is that we don't even know how good we have it in comparison to times before. And all you got to do is really start scanning the historical records and the journals and the writings and all of the, and even just getting into the poetry and the literature. It's all there about what level of work and toil and slavery, not to some tyrant that humanity had to obey, but to the demands put upon us by the natural world. And so this illusion that nature doesn't charge us for anything. It might not be in the same way as like the stock market in New York, but there's still a price on everything. And the price is your ability to develop skills, your ability to apply your skills by toil and work and effort. And then, of course, everybody doing all that work is going to want to see a result for all that work. And the result should be, hey, I was able to build some kind of structure to live in to protect me from the elements of nature. And then I'm able to build some things and generate some skill in being able to ward off wild animals that are constantly trying to attack me. And then, oh, now we've got other people that don't like the fact that I'm in this location, and that tribe over there wants to eliminate me and my tribe over here. So I better develop some skills in how to at least have defensive warfare skills so I can defend myself. And it just keeps going and going and going until you realize that, like, yeah, you're not put on this world to just sit by and be stagnant. There's a demand placed upon you because it's about bringing out the best in the human being and forging the next layer of what you could call natural evolution, the evolutionary process. And there's many layers to that. I'm not just talking strictly Darwinian level here, natural order. And in order to do that, think about it. You can't just sit back with your hand out and expect nature to put food in your bowl. It's not gonna go that way. You have to go out and actually climb those trees to get those coconuts. You have to go out and create these tools that are going to actually make your survival and a lot easier. And so what I feel is, like, in the West specifically, for whatever reason, it was the first time the idea was born that it had to come from the idea first that there was this thing called the individual, right? This is where it all comes together here. It's not just about, well, what capitalism and money and nature. It's actually getting down to something very deep here, I think, in these arguments, is like the tribal setting is a collectivist setting. And there's a reason for it, right? There's a reason for it because before we had the technology or even the thinking to be able to free man from that tribal setting and that collectivism, it was the way of survival. There were many pragmatic reasons for those types of setups, right? And so people that idealize that, they think, oh, we got to go back because look at the mess we've created. Look at the horrors of the modern world. But they forget, in that pre-civilization world, you want to talk horrors. There's many people who've documented it, and it's just a different kind of horrors that we're dealing with. But it's still the same thing because you're still dealing with nature here. You're still dealing with human nature specifically. So, if you're just expecting to get free handouts from nature, you're not going to get it. And so if you have this system of an individual, meaning you have your own inalienable rights, and you have your own mind and your own reason and your own logic, and you have your own personal responsibility. It's not just that you're part of this group. and everything we measure you against is going to be the group, right? It's no, you're unto yourself. You're on your own. You can work with other people. Obviously, there's a certain bit of collectivism that's always going to be there. But the reason tyranny keeps rising, I think, is because of this misconception that if we just band together and basically fight against nature and work against it and work against our human nature and reprogram human nature. This is the argument of the Marxists. We got to reprogram human nature in order for humanity to finally find peace and kumbaya. That's a contradiction because you're going against the natural order to try to fix things that went wrong with the natural order. And so these ideas all start with these types of misconceptions, I think, is that we have to go back to some tribe, right? They always say, oh, it takes a village to raise a child and all this kind of stuff. Even though there might be some levels there, but if you know what you're looking at, it's very interesting to get into. We can talk about that. And then this idea that if we just go back to nature and get rid of money and get rid of trade and go back to barter, that somehow we're going to have a better civilization. And that's actually what happened, is that in that post that I did, and I can't find it now, but
I've got it.
I made those points listed of basically my top arguments against those points made in the meme. I had an interesting exchange with a few people in there. Some of them are my friends and love them dearly, but I saw where the misconception was basically, I was like, okay, and this is how I always ask people, if you don't like Western capitalism as a system, and let's just leave aside all the discussion about the Federal Reserve and the infiltration and the takeover of our banking system and the corruption that's happened. And by the way, it was socialist Marxist policies that crept into that slowly deconstructed it. And that's, I think, where the origin of that corruption happened, but that's another thing. If you want to get rid of that, what are you going to replace it with? And I'm like, I give people the microphone. Okay, what are you going to replace? Are we going back to the village? We're going back to the trees now? We're regressing back into living like the pygmies or something? Like, what are we going to do? And then people are like, well, we're just going to trade and barter. And I'm like, okay, there's many, many issues with that as a replacement for a free market system. And the number one thing that everybody forgets about is the enslavement, not to the tyrant, not to the Federal Reserve and the banksters, but the enslavement to your fellow man. And this was Ryan's argument. This was many great thinkers we can get into that argued this. And like Hayek and all these guys that went, hey, there's a different way. We don't have to go extreme totalitarianism on either side of this in order to have the peace and the freedom in the world that I think suits the human spirit. The idea is that there was a path that led to the idea of trade between human beings that was fair. This was the intention of it. Okay, this was the original intention of it. If it worked out like that, that's a different debate. But the original intention was to have a system that mirrored human nature and best suited human nature, not an idealized nature that everybody's like hoping for, the utopian vision that hasn't shown itself, right? It's something that was mirrored based off of nature itself, its principles, its demands upon the human being, and then the nature of the human being itself.
Yeah.
And we'll just stop there for now.
Yeah, it just begs the question, like, what is money? And ultimately, money is human life force exchanged. And like when you're holding a dollar bill or a note in your pocket or whatever it might be, that's just ultimately symbolic of the best of your ability. And people make the argument for like a resource-based economy and trade and stuff like that. But what's the usefulness of like trading bricks or trading corn or trading seeds? Like, what are you going to do? Carry around like a bucket load or a barrel load of these things? And so, we hate money, yet we forget what's at the roots of it. And also this, like, kind of, for me, what comes up is like, what role does envy play in this urge and this need and this wants a return to nature? Because we see this hatred of the rich proliferating all around us as well. And sure, people do get rich in dodgy, corrupt, immoral ways as well. But at the core of it, the richest person ultimately is the person that uses their mind most effectively, who creates the most leverage. And to me, that's not something to tear down,
Yeah, no, well said. And it's funny you mentioned like that, because I was thinking about this after having some of these back and forths. I'm like, what is really driving these desires to, just burn it all down and blow it all up and go back to, rewind history. And I think that you're right. I think there's a psychological aspect to this. It's also embedded in human nature, but human nature untamed, I would put it in that category. It's kind of like there's this wild part of us, that other part that wants to move forward in life and wants to, create and be free and all of that. And so we're all sort of battling that on an individual level. And then what this is just the argument happening in the collective. This is like the expression of that internal struggle that I think everybody's dealing with on some level. And if you have people that have more than you in the capitalist system, in a system ruled by, sane and just law, you're not permitted to just go and grab that guy that you don't like, that you think has more than you, and bring him out and hang him on a tree in his backyard. There's many forms of tyranny that don't exist just with some form of government or some tyrant in power. It's been known as the tyranny of the masses. And we've seen this. This is the story of history that people don't really want to talk about, because they're thinking like, if we get rid of people who are successful in this free system, and if we get rid of people that have more, and if we get rid of money entirely, and then we can finally have peace. This is the false equation that we have. And I go, well, did we have peace pre-industrial revolution? Did we have peace pre the introduction of Western capitalism? Really? Was it really peaceful and beautiful? And these tribes are just living like the hobbits in the Shire, and then these evil, Western people came in and just destroyed their way of life. And this is what they're being taught in school. These kids are being taught this in school, by the way, by these Marxist professors who are.
What do you think the Shire represent? What do you think the Shire represents?
Well, the Shire, I look at it as a place in consciousness. It's a mythical realm that is sort of an aspect of an element of your own mind, really, and even in the Shire, there would have been some sort of exchange or trade, and maybe they were a small enough little village in there that they could have done some kind of barter system. I don't know if Tolkien wrote about this, but remember, Lord of the Rings and the Shire and all that is a metaphor. And I think all of those different places, whether we're talking Mordor or whether we're talking the Shire, are sort of hints at different elements of your consciousness, different archetypes in your mind of that. And so there's a dream in the human mind of this heavenly utopia that I think is born of something legitimate, and it's a virtuous thing, and it's a part of you, right? But the evil stuff starts to happen when you try to force your utopia on the world and onto nature, right? When you're taking something in the mythical archetypal realm of your consciousness and trying to superimpose it on the physical natural world, not taking human nature into account, or nature's laws into account, that's when all the poverty starts, the starvation, the genocide, the struggle sessions, and all the horrible things that we've seen in the totalitarian regimes that we've covered before, right? So I think that this is where I put that line, and I go, everybody needs to maybe read the other side of the argument here, because I know it's an easy argument in your mind to just say, well, it's all the people that have more than me, or are doing better than me, or can produce more than me, that are the problem. And notice that everything is about people above you. That's the projection from these people that I think are possessed with sort of a victim mentality, right? Is they look at all the causes of evil in the world as simply people that are higher than your station in life. And this isn't new. This is something that's been a problem in humanity for as long as we can see recorded history. And so if we're talking about, okay, if we see corruption happening in our monetary system, because some pirates came in and, totally rearranged everything and are stealing from us, and look at what they're using it to, hurt people and destroy our economies and take power. We are having a false equivalency in our mind that we have to blow up the entire thing of individualism, freedom, free trade, the original, idea of what capitalism was, which I guess we should explain, because you asked about that, Joel, is like there's the capitalism of today that we see happening, where it's what you could call crony capitalism or fake capitalism, right?
Yeah, well, it's not really capitalism, because, the moment freedom is intervened with in terms of the core essence of laissez-faire capitalism, like it changes the entire beast altogether, So I don't even like applying the words what we currently exist within today.
And I agree with you. And it's because this would be the way people talk about. So when people that are advocating for the abolishment of capitalism, they're arguing from what they think capitalism is, which it's not. Yeah. So it's the wrong word. You're right. Do we have to just change the word because it's become basically like a psyop word in people's heads? Maybe. Yeah. But I like saying like free trade, free markets.
Yeah.
The reason that a lot of people don't like that though is because they're like, well, we got to control the people who work too hard. Because if you get up, Joel, every day and you are up at 5 a.m. and you're bright and shiny and you're working your arse off, you're going to have success whether we had a monetary system or no monetary system. Okay. You could rig the barter game and just have everybody bartering and getting it. Like, if you're out there working in this world, you're going to be ahead of the curve, right? Against the guy that isn't working as hard, isn't producing, isn't working on himself in order to develop the ability and the skills and the genius in order to produce something of value that's worth bartering or exchanging for, right? So this is where it does get down to the personalist level of psychology. And we brought up the nature of envy. And I think that sort of a cult of envy, it's what Rand called it, and I think it's accurate. The cult of envy is very alluring to the people who are riddled with envy. It's pretty simple. And they want what everybody else has that they don't have. Everybody's not happy with what they have. You could even have those people. We've got many stories of people who are wealthy. They did make it. They've got millions of dollars in the bank, but they're just not happy with what they have, right? So people then equate, well, look, money's hollow. It doesn't have any feelings. There's no humanity in it. It's like, yeah, but there's categories of things that the human being needs to express, right? And so you don't just equate all that together. You have to have a system of trade and barter that's sound and reasonable and allows for the freedom of every individual to either make it or break it, right? You have to have a system that allows for failures too. Like, I don't like this whole talk about how we have to save everybody from their mistakes and their bad decisions. Because if you keep saving yourselves from let's say we have our children, for example, we're trying to teach children. A good example is I'm coaching this competitive team in jiu-jitsu. Got like these 50 kids I'm working on, and I took them in. They've never trained jiu-jitsu in their lives, and I'm trying to turn them into champions. And I'm having good progress. We just took home 29 medals at the last tournament. A lot of these kids have only trained with me 6 months, So, but what is that? What did they have to do? Each individual. Yeah, they're part of a team. I guess you could call that a collective, but they made it to a team that when you go on the competition mat, it's you against one other opponent. And that opponent mirrors you. You're trying to figure out where your skills are at. What did those children have to do to themselves in order to produce this skill to go out and win a gold medal against somebody far more experienced than them in a tournament? Well, they had to put the work in. They had to have the desire it had to start with a desire. It started with a desire that, hey, I want to win. Well, what is the desire to win anyways? Is it just to get like everybody cheering your name? Is it just to get the medal? Maybe for some people, that's how they start going on that process. But if you really listen I listen to these kids and I watch them, what really motivates them is the feeling that comes with having themselves do something that they succeeded at, that they put the work in. Like when I see a child that's really, shy and timid and, doesn't know what they're doing, and then they go from that to just mollywhopping like 4 competitive kids in a row at a tournament in jiu-jitsu, they're not just looking at that gold medal. Yeah. They're shocked that they even were capable of dealing with that level of pressure. So on a symbolic level, that was them going through a process of growth at a very high level, high speed rate. And they learned that when I came and I showed up to class and I followed the instruction and I worked hard and I had that desire and I had that goal, and then I did the work to achieve the goal, and then I achieved the goal, they now prove something to themselves. That's the first layers of self-esteem in that kid.
Yeah, that's right.
That was the gratification. It was not the medals.
It's the desire
they did something.
It's the desire for self-esteem, right?
Right.
And it's
also.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the urge to heroism, which we all have within us as well. And ultimately, that's also what's at the core of this Marxist return to the natural world push, is like destroy the hero. And it's only in that urge to heroism which has led also to everything which the West has built. And then you witness all around us the war on pride. And what is pride except for the emotional reward for achievements? You do the thing, you get the self-esteem. Wow, there's this natural reward mechanism built within me. I feel pride. Let me go get more of that. Let me go become more great.
And yet that's one of the 7 deadly sins. I mean, I get it, hubris. So there's other elements to that, but like on a basic level, I agree with what Joel's saying. It's like you go through this process and you experience this feeling of putting work in, and what does that do to you?
But I mean, just imagine what the man who first rubbed 2 sticks together and developed fire kind of felt. In many ways, we consider fire to be the first technology. Now we have warmth. Now we have a weapon. Now we can heat food. Now we can have power. Now we can have energy. And it's like, it's that feeling within us that led to more and more innovation, which ultimately led to the rise of everything that we're experiencing all around of us here today. And I love Rand's argument here, which is that money is not the root of all evil. It's actually the root of all good, which our RAS students know very well, because in the objectivist ethics, she argues that the good is that which proliferates life. Evil is that which is anti-life. And so what is the moral objective of all of nature, if not its own survival first and foremost? If survival is not valued, no other values are possible, right? So in many ways, it is the highest morality to make money. It is the highest morality to figure out the problems of your life, to sustain oneself, and to continue to grow and to continue to evolve. And this is what they're trying to take away from us.
Yeah, exactly. And when you look at it, I think people would have trouble looking at it from a deeper level than just the physical nature of money and the money system and all of that, right? You have to look at this as everything is basically an expression of the human mind, and it's a symbol. The money is a symbol for something. It's a unit of exchange. It's as simple as it can be, right? There's money systems that could be better than others or worse than others, or could become corrupted over time. But the corruptive element in any of our systems isn't because necessarily of the system, right? Unless, of course, the system was developed for a very particular corrupt reason from the beginning. But it's this is an element in human nature, no matter what system. We've tried all the systems that we know of. Maybe there's even more we don't yet know of, but we've tried them all many times. We've run these experiments many times, and we know the outcome, right? And so if you talk about something very simple, when you think about money, or at least the way money should be looked at, it's merit. Mm-hmm. Money, merit. Did you do what it took? Did you actually apply yourself to earn your status, or was it given to you, right? And this is the idea, like, you see homeless people sitting around all over the place, right? And your heart bleeds for them, you feel bad for them, and you go, okay, well, I'll just give this homeless guy a bunch of money and that'll fix it, right? Or I see all these starving people in Africa. Let's just keep donating billions of dollars year after year to have it get flushed down the toilet over there, by the corrupt system, and the fact that money isn't the way that system is going to be fixed. You got to realize it's because money's just a unit of exchange, and it's actually a symbol of, like what you're talking about, of that application of your mind and your work into something. That is it the money that's the corrupt? This was Rand's argument. Is it money that's corrupt, or were you not worthy of your money? Right? Should you just be given the money? Is that, because this is what the argument is then. You go, well, how do we fix the homeless population? Do we just give them money? Because here's what's going to happen. From what I've seen, you give a lot of these people money, what do? They do really bad things with it. They don't use it as a tool to change their status from being a person living on the streets, screaming at the sky, to being somebody that lives in a home with a family and is out there living their life and living their best life.
Look at the statistics with the lottery. So, similar thing, people win the
lottery, exactly.
Like, after a few years, they go back to where they were very often.
They do, because what's the difference? Was it the money that because the money corrupted them? Really though? Really, the money? Did the physical dollar bill corrupt you?
Yeah.
Did the numbers in your bank account corrupt you? Or was it something in you that corrupted you? This all comes back to merit and personal responsibility. Is it the money that corrupts, or is it a part of your own nature that's corrupting, right? And it's easy to blame external things. You can blame nature, You can blame your circumstance. You can blame money. You can blame capitalism. You can blame the West. There's lots of things to blame in the world for all your problems, right? And that is the get out of jail free card that everybody wants. It's easier for them to live in the way of thinking that says, I am a victim in this world. Everything is preying on me. And so that's why I'm not successful. It's everybody else's fault that I'm not living my best life. And that produces a very downward spiral psychology in that person. Whereas the way of the West, the tradition of Western values, right, is no, it is about heroism. It's about merit. It's about reaping what you sow. And it's about personal responsibility for what you do have control over. No matter what system we invent, whether we're in modern civilization or pre-industrial civilization, you are going to be called to account for your actions or your non-actions. The laws of merit, personal responsibility, and all these things that I was saying that a sane understanding of what money could be and value could be is supposed to represent. All those rules apply whether we have a monetary system or not. That was my main argument, right? And then there's just what's more pragmatic, what's more functional, what actually works, right? And so, we have to try to understand that this isn't just about studying the economic arguments, because there's people that are probably way better than me at giving all of those. It's about understanding the psychological component here, the human nature argument, that many people are looking to pass the buck. And it's kind of funny that it's the buck, right? To pass the dollar on, to pass the responsibility on. So if you look at, and it's funny how when you make this mental shift, you're going to make more money. You're going to have more success. You're going to, see the change happening in your life. If you operate under that victim mindset that says everybody's out to get me, this system's evil and corrupt, therefore I'm not going to participate in it, and I'm going to go live in the forest, that's not really going to be sustainable, and you're looking at it from the wrong angle. See, the heroic type looks at the situation and goes, okay, I can't control all these things over here. I can't control, like I'm living in Canada, I can't control the insanity of our government right now. I can't control that and the way they're running our economy. But what I can control is I can still get my ass up every day. And even within that corrupted system where our dollar's hyperinflated, I got to work 10 times harder than I normally would. I could sit back and go, like a lot of people that I know in this, in my communities, of people who are awake to what's going on and who've just sort of given up. And now they're living in squalor. They have no money. Their kids are, living out in the forest with them. Like they're not progressing, And whereas I say, no, get up despite all of that and apply the principle that I'm talking about of I'm going out there and I'm going to work on what I do have control over. And I'm going to activate the heroism within myself to deal with the challenges, whatever way they come. And when you approach life like that, it's not even, and it's not about money. It really isn't. It really is not about money. It's about what money would symbolize to you. So you can reclaim that by simply applying yourself. Now, if you want to go and get at the making of the changes that would help, ease the economic tension in all of our nations that I think is throwing people into poverty, maybe start asking yourself, what really changed in our Western monetary systems that has been producing a lot more economic hardship? And then pause that and then go, what's really interesting is that even with the corruption that's happened in Western economies, why is the entire third world coming here and not remaining in the pre-civilizational state that everybody here is dreaming would be the utopia? It's not a utopia in Haiti. It's not a utopia in Africa. It's not a utopia in Venezuela. It's not a utopia. It never is. And it's the sales pitch of utopia, but it never gets there. Why? Because it's magical child thinking. It's an incorrect view of how to activate your own heroism and go out and actually do something of value in your life and in the world. And don't forget the people that invented these systems originally and the people that have achieved legitimate success. I'm not talking about criminal success or screwing people over. I'm talking about people that worked hard. They built their financial security, right? what do they know that the average person out there doesn't know? Is it that they're just all evil? Because that's the other assumption. Anybody that's successful must be evil. Wouldn't that be nice? Doesn't that ease the burdens that nature puts upon you to grow from within yourself and create something of value? Not just creating money. Remember, you're trying to create the internal money, the inner value. That's where the real wealth is, right? And then any money or any material success or external success you're going to achieve is only a reflection of that, right? The difference is that it's all about the premise of your worldview. It's your mindset about how you're approaching things. If I go back to that example of those kids that I'm training for competition, I had kids in that team that had a very negative self-view, and I spotted it right away, right? They're younger, maybe 10, 11 years old, and I can tell they get down on themselves the minute they experience failure. Hey, when they're doing great, they're unstoppable. When their mind is like, oh, I'm winning, I'm doing well, they're unstoppable. The second they meet any level of resistance, what happens? They cave, they start crying, they don't want to do it anymore, they want to quit, they want to give up. And I have to constantly have these chats with them to remind them of, hey, 5 minutes ago, you were killing it. What switched? It was your mindset that switched. And now you want to blame your training partner. You want to blame the referees at the tournament that you didn't win. You want to blame your coaches. You're looking for everybody else to blame. When the reality is, no. It's a mindset shift that needs to take place here. And when I was able to prove this to some of these kids, I don't see that behavior in them anymore. It literally cured it, at least for now. So all they needed was a metaphor, an environment to practice this skill, which just so happened to be the training mats, the competition. That's all just a staged metaphorical practice for this inner development work. That's how I see it. It's not about the other external things.
Everything requires your efforts. Like you leave your house, it's going to collect dust. And the same with anything. If you just sit there and let life and nature have you, like it's going to have you ultimately, And it's like, has blame, has victimhood, has envy, have these things ever led to the life that you genuinely want, the life that you genuinely crave? And the answer is absolutely no. So like on a primordial level, the first acceptance is that life is a challenge. Life is complex. Life requires the application of my mind to solve problems. And hopefully I can go from solving less fun problems to more fun problems. And that's kind of the journey that we all need to take, And it's like the initial reassurance to be like, okay, life has this entropic factor built within it. Let me go and meet it. Let me rise to the occasion. And, let me find self-esteem within that. The only person I need to prove anything to is myself, ultimately. And let's fucking welcome that challenge,
Exactly. And I guess this would be a good time to sort of point out that when I was speaking earlier about sort of like the impression that people have of capitalism and money in the West versus the reality of it would be this. If you think about times prior to any sort of free market idea or the concept of a free individual, right? Or free trade, I don't think people studied enough history to realize how rare that was, how that wasn't supposed to happen, and just how reviled that was in the beginning, right? And when you think about it, what was it really? We had feudalism and various forms of it. So basically different forms of communism and totalitarianism. We've had many expressions of that all over the world. And then suddenly we said, hey, we keep running into this problem where these elite groups keep getting all the power, and we're just all living in toil. We're all slaves and serfs to some lord or master, right? And we're not free. Our soul as a human being is not being fulfilled. Our destiny is not being fulfilled. And if you look at those times, that's the Dark Ages, that's wars and genocides and just poverty like you can't even imagine, okay? And all of this before electricity existed, right? Just watch the power go out and watch the whole world go mad today, okay? And electricity wouldn't have been invented without the precepts and concepts of Western capitalism, because you wouldn't have had incentives for people to go and apply themselves to that degree to figure something like that out. And then, maybe some people hijacked it and turned it into a little, mafia controlled electricity or energy, whatever. But that's just what humans are going to do, right? No matter what you do. The inventions and the brilliance and the genius came from a notion that you're an individual that has your own mind, and if you go out, we're gonna give you guys a chance. If you go out and you work and you apply yourself, you will be rewarded according to that scale, right? It's not just going to be like, I go out and work my butt off, my neighbor doesn't, and he gets the same, right? That doesn't incentivize the best in humanity. Actually, Ayn Rand does a nice write-up in Atlas Shrugged, where she's talking about the railway company and the whole, it's like there's like a video on YouTube. It's like a 45-minute or 1 hour long thing where she goes in and uses that story of the railway company to describe what happens when you work against human nature and you bring out the worst in humanity. And she's describing what happened in communist Russia and what's happened in these socialist experiments in the past, where it brings out the worst in humanity while selling you the utopian vision, right?
Yeah. So much of the time, like these proponents of these ideas, they're anti-technological as well, And Milton Friedman has this amazing quip, like he visited China and he saw they were all digging with shovels instead of like digging equipment and machinery. And he's like, why are you guys digging with shovels? And they go, oh, because more of us can work if we have shovels. And he goes, so why are you using spoons if that's the case?
No, right. Yeah. How far do you want to take it? Yeah, because it's like, we got to share the workload. We got to share the workload. And it's like, okay, so I guess what I'm saying here to wrap it up is that the idea of capitalism was to give you, the average person, a shot at making it in this world. Whereas before, you were literally owned as chattel.
Yeah.
Now, we can make an argument that we're sort of living in an illusion and there's still that chattel system that's set up. But leave that aside for a minute. Just talking principles here of the intention of, I think, the original capitalist system, which was to free humanity from the oligarchs, and not just from the oligarchs, but from the masses around them. So that now you have trade as the standard of relation between humans, as opposed to pointing a gun at somebody, right? Using force and coercion to get your way, which is how it was done before. Yeah. All the disagreements and all the quabbles over land and resources and who has what wasn't settled by two people sitting down and negotiating deals and then shaking hands with a win-win arrangement in the end. That's not how it was done. It was done at might makes right. Who's got more guys? Who's got more weapons? How can we just take that shit and make it ours? So that's the way the world works. If we don't have the principles and values of a system that would give you the opportunity to live and thrive and grow without having to point a gun at somebody. Instead, we, as Rand said, man should become traders. That trading, meaning TRADER, trading. We're traders. We're not just killing each other for resources all the time. And it creates a dynamic of
not selling your weaknesses to others' stupidity, but your talents to their reason.
Exactly. And you're also not just going off the whims of people. Like if you live in a small village and that entire village suddenly targets you because they think you're a witch or you're demonically possessed or you're some kind of an evil person or you're a greedy this or you're whatever, then they are going to come and use their force to burn you at the stake or put you in prison or take all your shit, right? Whereas the idea was to say, no, we need to free man from this condition. And look what happened, even though I think right out of the gate, the system was slowly infiltrated and corrupted. But look at what was created, even with the little smidgen of free market that we had. The smidgen of freedom gave the entire world all the things that we take for granted. All those, latte sipping Marxists in LA or whatever that have no idea how good they have it, simply by having access to electricity and modern communication tools that were all developed out of Western capitalism, right?
Yeah.
They're the ones critiquing it from those lofts. And I find it interesting. And then when you tell those people, well, hey, if you really, really want all those Marxist tenets in your system, there's plenty of countries in the world that exercise all of those tenets. Why not move to those places? Or better yet, nobody's stopping you from going to live like the Amish in America. Do you want to go live like the Amish? Start a little commune, start a little cult, and go and live off the land and do the whole thing and do the whole tribal setting and, and do all that. Great. But here's the trade though. You've got to practice what you preach. You got to give up all of your electricity, no more airplane, car travel. Like you literally have to practice.
No
what you
iPhone.
preach.
No iPhone.
No
Give me your
iPhones.
fucking iPhone. That's good.
No YouTube. Yeah, no nothing. No bank account, nothing. Just go and build it and prove what you're saying. And the thing is nobody's done that. And when they do, it turns into a shit show, right? So that's what it is the proof is
when they do it, when they do it, they become capitalists. When they do it, they become capitalists.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's the thing is like, that's what always got me that was the biggest contradiction is none of these Marxists are willing to go and live in an actual Marxist country run by those principles and values. And instead they're trying to convert America and other Western countries into that, which was always striking me as a bit odd, that this isn't about, oh, we just want to do our own little thing and please leave me alone. Well, go ahead, go live somewhere, go live in the sticks and start a commune then. And they never do. Go leave all of your wealth and everything behind, get out of your Tesla and go start some shit. Go get a horse and buggy, But then even with that horse and buggy, that's technology, right? Applied to nature. You got to learn how to tame that horse and train it and take care of it. Like nature's already putting demands on you. Better get your arse up and work. It's not going to be a free ride. In fact, you're going to be working your bloody ass off 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just to get your ration of carrots or whatever it's going to be. You're going to use to barter and trade with your neighbors. And then what's going to happen? You're going to find out, you're going to see the worst part of the human spirit as well. And they're just going to come and steal all your shit in the end anyways. So many counts of this.
People have this.
Then the final thing to wrap that up is when people talk about the evils of capitalism or the evils of free trade and all of that, it's like, yeah, but you're really just critiquing the things you don't like about the natural world, really, right? In many regards, it's that antipathy to nature again. Nature places demands upon you, and humanity wants to throw off those demands. That's what it is. It's a sort of magical child thinking, and they think that if we get rid of any of the systems we put in place to at least attempt to make our lives a little bit easier, if we get rid of all the systems, we blow it all up, that suddenly those demands will be released from you. And I'm just here to say, no, nothing is free. Nature does charge you a tax every day, and it's due all the time. And that tax is, if you don't get up and apply your mind and your hands to your work for your survival, you will be punished for that action or that non-action. And so as much as I want to see some changes made so that we can get back to a much more laissez-faire free market system and really bring those values back again, look at what we've been able to accomplish, even in light of much of the corruption that we can document here. And the proof is in the pudding that nobody's fleeing to the tribal groups. Nobody's fleeing their country to go live in these Marxist socialist hellholes. They're fleeing to come to the West because of the fact, what do they all say? Oh, I've got a better shot at life. I'm being persecuted by my government. I'm being hunted down by my neighbors. So I want to come to a place where I'm going to be free of that. Well, I mean, there you go. If you're coming here and not going there, why are these people still arguing that those systems are what we need to start installing here?
Yeah, I mean, Joel's family, my family, they immigrated to Australia for Joel and the U.S. For my dad, and they came here in search of a better life where their hard work could be honored, where they could make something of themselves, and they did, which is pretty amazing. But yeah, I love that you made the LA joke because it's just hilarious to me. I see it all the time, and it's just rooted in a lot of deep virtue signaling as well, because they're not going to give up this stuff. They're not. Like, people will hate on Amazon and then use it 5 times a day. It's like, stop using it. You know what I mean? Like, exactly. Like, I don't know. I personally like Amazon. Obviously, there's some issues and we can have that conversation, but like, I'm not going to sit there and talk shit on something that like has made my life a lot easier and has freed up time for me to do other things. And then there's this whole idea of like the nostalgia of like, oh, I'm going to be a farmer and live that life. Listen, I do a very, very small version of that here as like a little bit of a, working the land and homesteading, and it's fucking a lot of work. You have to learn skills. There's things you have to deal with all the time. And like, to just go and make that your life and leave the cities, like, you're going to have to realize that there's certain comforts and certain conveniences that you don't have when you choose that. Again, at the end of the day, it comes down to your values and what you want. But like, it's not easy. It's not easy to have to like toil to a certain degree, but that's what's required, like you've been saying before. So, it's just this like illusion and this fantasy people live with. But again, at the root of it is the psychology and philosophy of a person. I know you say it, Michael says it, we say it, we're living in a post-psychological, post-philosophical world. Do people even have a personal philosophy? Have they put the time and the energy and effort to have one, or is it just programmed into them? Do they know themselves? Do they understand the architecture of the human psyche and how that plays out intrapersonally and interpersonally? And most people don't, but it's those people take the time and the energy to understand themselves, what it means to be an individual, how do you live, where they're going to make something of themselves. And that's sitting around complaining all the time, hating on people and blaming other people. Like, I get it. We can be victimized. I get it. We maybe at times in our lives, we have been victimized. I know we've talked about it, but how long do you stay in that state? At some point you go, this mindset hasn't led me to where I want to be. So maybe you need to make a shift. And if you don't know what that shift is, maybe you need some support. Maybe you need to have the self-esteem and the wherewithal to go, who can I reach out to for support? Then you take that information, you take that knowledge, you become more self-responsible, and you start applying that into your life and you start seeing the changes. But I mean, it's easy again to point the finger.
It's too easy. It's too easy. And that's actually a good point. And I'm going to bring this one up. I've got a really good, I did another post earlier than the post we were talking about today, where I was talking about, what's the definition of a free market? Because here in Canada, it's a really taboo topic actually to talk about it, right? And because there's just, I think it's like 86% of the professors in Canadian universities are like openly Marxist. So, our young people are being taught the wrong principles and values, I think, and they're not being taught the side-by-side comparison. It's always like capitalism, evil, West evil, anything Western is evil, and then this is where we need to go. And they're being taught that Rousseauan, back to the trees nonsense as well. So I was like, okay, here's the quote that people need from Ayn Rand, because she's talking about it as a philosopher. Okay, she wasn't talking about it as an economist. This is often the critiques go wrong. Like, no, you're critiquing her as an economist. You're not understanding. She's making a philosophical argument. And because we're living in that post-philosophical age you're bringing up, Erasmus, nobody's computing this. So what we're talking about is like, what is the moral argument here of, and this was brilliantly illustrated by a good quote from Thomas Sowell as well, where he was like talking to these liberal professors of his day, these Marxist professors of his day. And he's like, look, how much of my money is basically to be your money? Like how much of the money that I have earned do you have a right to? Like, can you tell me what's the number? Like of what I've done to create value in my life, how much do I owe you that? What do I owe you? Like he was trying to get to that argument. Well, she's got a definition of a truly free economy. Okay. So she says this, Ayn Rand, in a true free economy where no man or group of men can use physical coercion against anybody, economic power can be achieved only by voluntary means, by the voluntary choice and agreement of all those who participate in the process of production and trade. Hint, that's a massive word there, the voluntary participation. In a free market, all prices, wages, and profits are determined not by the arbitrary whim of the rich or of the poor, people forget about that, nor by anyone's greed or by anyone's need, but by the law of supply and demand. The mechanism of a free market reflects and sums up all the economic choices and decisions made by all the participants. Men trade their goods or services by mutual consent to mutual advantage, according to their own independent, uncoerced judgment. A man can grow rich only if he is able to offer better values, better products or services at a lower price than others are able to offer. Wealth in a free market is achieved by a free, general, democratic vote, by the sales and the purchases of every individual who takes part in the economic life of the country. Whenever you buy one product rather than another, you are voting for the success of some manufacturer. And in this type of voting, every man votes only on those matters which he is qualified to judge, on his own preferences, interests, and needs. No one has the power to decide for others or to substitute his judgment for theirs. No one has the power to appoint himself the voice of the public and to leave the public voiceless and disenfranchised. A lot in there, but she's summing up better than all of us combined can sum up this argument in basically saying what she's getting at here is human nature. She's getting at a deep chord that if you read through it, you go, right, we're talking about philosophy here. We're talking about psychology. We're talking about human nature. And that what system is the more moral system when it comes to you as an individual. Now, you have to first have the belief that human beings have an individual mind, which I think is demonstrable, right? And you can even see this individualism in nature. Now, you're going to see a bit of collectivism as well in nature, right? Because it's dual. But Michael was pointing this out, and I thought it was brilliant. He's like, you think nature should be looked at as this big collectivistic machine of oppression? It was like, every single leaf is different. Every single one. So you have a category of trees and you have a category of leaves, but the collectivist looks at it all as, oh, it's all the same shit. It's just a bunch of trees. They're all the same. But the minute you zoom in, the minute you pay more attention and apply your mind and your observation to those leaves and to those pine cones and to those snowflakes and to those, like even the way the atmosphere looks every day is slightly different. There's a difference right down to the base level. So there's a general category, human being, but then there's an infinite array of difference. There's a general category, leaves on trees, but every single leaf is different, just a little bit. And every ladybug, everything. So individualism and the idea that there's a unique expression that nature is putting out in all living things is incredible. And so when you start there and then you go, okay, so if we accept the fact that human beings have this individual aspect as well, this uniqueness as well, and we're not just talking about the way your eyes are shaped or your ears or anything, we're talking also about your mind, your particular blend of experiences in life that led to create who you are right now is itself also another level of uniqueness and individuality that will be totally different. Like Joel and Erasmus and myself, we've all had similar experiences in life. Maybe we've all been to a pub and had a pint. We've all gone to a mall. We've all, but our own way of experiencing each one of those experiences is infinitely unique. And then there's experiences that you've had that I haven't had. And there's attributes that you have that I don't have. And what the envious types do is they look at those differences and they go, we got to get rid of all the differences. We don't want individualism. We don't want individuality anymore. We don't want the uniqueness of nature. That's too frightening for me to compete against, the little man says, right? So I want to make everybody the same shade of gray. I want every leaf in nature to look exactly the same because that makes sense to my mind. That's what they're arguing really when you boil it all down, is they hate. That's the antipathy to nature I'm talking about. The natural part of themselves that's striving for heroism, they got to suppress the shit out of that because it frightens them. Because they know a great weight of responsibility falls upon them at that moment when they recognize that. And so they don't want the uniqueness. And then that's when it gets into the economic level of trade. You have one unique individual trading with another unique individual. And the point of it is to build peaceful relationships with win-win outcomes amongst humanity. That's how we achieve more peace in this world, not forcing square pegs into round holes, making everybody the same shade of gray like these globalists want to do to the world, and getting rid of individualism. See, because you got to understand the architecture of control, the reason they hate individualism, the reason they hate uniqueness in nature is because it threatens their hold on power. Isn't that interesting? You can't have William Wallace out there going against the grain in Scotland when all the rest of the Scots were just content to get on their knees in front of these kings. You had a unique guy go, fuck this shit. We're going to take these guys out. We're going to claim our freedom back, or we're going to die trying. Because what the hell is life all about anyways? You're going to die alone in your beds. Why not make a good fight for it and fight for your freedom? You want these lords and elites coming in and just stealing your children whenever they want and taking your shit whenever they want because they have more power than you? Fuck that. And how many different people have risen up in history with that same spirit to fight back? So, but what was that spirit that fought back? It was the spirit of that individual. that spirit, that cry for human freedom, that was what fought back. It's an expression of the natural order that fought back against something that was working against the natural order. That's how it worked. So nobody wants to have that discussion, because what it does is it calls them towards greatness. It calls them towards their individuality, which has a boatload of that responsibility. It's easier to just envy and hate everybody that is doing those things, and to say, no, we need to hyper control everything and micromanage everything down to the fine detail in order to achieve peace on earth and goodwill towards men. Whereas these philosophers are going to say, no, 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 you're missing the huge component here, which is human nature. And we need to build something that's built off of that, not try to put everybody in re-education camps and point guns to their head and just go out and start killing all the people that are successful and have all the things and are out there doing those heroic works. So that's the real argument here. Is it's actually not just about an economic argument that we could bring in a Milton Friedman or a Hayek or some of these other guys, Ludwig von Mises or some of these people to argue. It's a philosophical, moral argument that for me inspired me to respond to that post where they're talking about how everything's free and we just got to go back to and I'm like, no, there's so much there's a big package that's underneath that argument that is going to strangle your civilization if you don't watch out for it. Now, that's not me to say, just to wrap this up, that's not to say, again, I didn't understand the spirit of that meme where they're talking about the beauty of nature and how nature is not the same as these machine world that we've created. I get that. But there's a flaw in the argument. And what I read from Ayn Rand is pointing out in no uncertain terms what that flaw really is, and then what the solution to that is. It's also what she's pointing out is the solution to all this hyperinflation we're seeing, to all this government corruption we're seeing, to this lawlessness that we're seeing, and all the crime and the homeless. There's solutions in there, but the solution is not to force change people. The solution is to educate and inspire and bring that culture back again. It was the culture that was destroyed before our economy was destroyed. And so that's why we got to go back to the philosophical, cultural framework when we're having this argument.
Yeah. Thanks for that, man. I love your passionate rants, man. They're next level. I think also with community, we have to look at it this way too, because historically it was very collectivistic, where it's like you sacrifice who you are to get along in the family, in a group, in a social group. And yet, what is the future of community? Because we are social beings. It's not about like this rigid, solitary individual, lone wolf philosophy, like stick your middle fingers up at everyone. But it's like, when individualism is the primary, when your uniqueness is the primary, then you come together where there isn't coercion, where we honor each other for our differences and our strengths. And we come together that way and we move forward from that place, as opposed to, I have to like hide so much of who I am just so I can get along in the family, in the social group, in the workplace, etc. And it's no, because again, like I love people, I love community, I love connection. It's part of the fabric of who we are as human beings. But don't tell me I can't be myself. You know what I mean? Don't say I can't be in this whatever collective unless I have to follow all your rules. So, and we're seeing that in some of these events that are popping up and communities that are being built, where it's like, man, like I love you for who you are. We may not have the same exact agreements on, or the same exact beliefs on everything, but like, dude, you're so amazing and so unique. Like, let's utilize your gifts to the best of your ability and vice versa. And like, I want all of you and vice versa. So I don't know. That's what I just see things moving forward. But individualism is at the foundation. And even from a human design standpoint, I've talked about this. We're moving to a new 400 stage cycle where we're moving from a tribalistic way of being. And supposedly, according to human design, in 2027, we're moving to this new 400-year cycle where individualism and self-knowledge and coming together from that place is going to be what's going to happen more and more, as opposed to self-sacrifice just so you can go along to get along, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And this is a good thing too, because this is the common misconception whenever we talk about individualism or personalism or capital or any of these things. The reason it gets everybody's hackles up is because they have this mathematical equation in their head that says if you're advocating for principles of individualism to be the foundation of your society, then that means you are this narcissistic lone wolf who just wants to go out alone and you don't want to have a community and all. it's nothing could be further from the truth. What we're talking about is, what kind of system do you want to govern your society? What kind of principles and values do you want to govern your society? And what premise, meaning what foundation, are you going to be launching from? And so we are both. We have an individual spirit, which should be honored for every individual, because you are your greatest enemy and your greatest savior all at the same time, right? So you need to have that. But then you also do have a social component, which you're going to work together with other individuals to do things like, I don't know, build bridges, build highways, build byways, build great things for your society, for your children. You're going to live in family units. That's a mini collective, right? But the thing is like you said, the premise of it being collective. See, collectivism and individualism, when we're really talking about it, are defined by what manner of government are you going to have? Are they going to rule by the whims of the mob? Are they going to rule by might makes right? Are they going to rule by the lowest common denominator? Like, what's the system going to be? Or are they going to rule on, hey, if your neighbors don't like you, you're still going to be protected from them coming with torches to your front door, right? To protect your right to be who you are. And so, yeah, the philosophical argument for individualism is that's the only path to get into communication with, I believe, the divine or the spirit or God or whatever you want to talk about, to activate the kingdom of heaven within you. No one's going to die for you. Okay. No one was born for you. Those are experiences that you are going to have in your life. And so there's that individual nature. And then the collective part of you is, what way are you approaching the collective? And how's that collective responding back to you, right? Remember, people are just a mirror for you, really, in this world. And so you're out there, you are pursuing your goals and dreams, and you are either going to work with like-minded individuals that are going to respect your individualism and respect your boundaries, or you're going to be working with a mob mentality, like what we went through with, say, the pandemic, where if you weren't following all of the cues given by the authorities and wearing the 2 masks and standing on the X and everything else, the collective will enforce those rules without even thinking twice about it, right? So we had a crash course in what we're talking about in reality, right? This isn't just philosophical anymore. This was very real, where when we were ruled under collectivistic principles during those lockdowns, what happened to your individual sovereignty? It got crushed, right? And then you find out later that the arguments used to take that individual sovereignty from you were spurious to begin with. And you find out, there was another political agenda behind that, right? And so that's the example. Is it from the premise of individual rights and freedom, or is it from the premise that you don't have any individual rights and freedom and you're just going to be ruled by a bunch of NPCs? We call them NPCs out there because these are non-player characters. It's kind of a joke, but it's real because these people have decided to stop playing the game. They've stopped engaging and showing up and participating in life. They're just waiting for the media to tell them what the next thing is. They're just waiting for the authorities to tell them what the next rules are. They're waiting for the next guru or cult leader to tell them what the next cool, trendy belief system is. They're not approaching the world from the inside out. It's all the outside in. So it's the outside in approach that produces collectivism in a negative form.
The beautiful paradox is that at the core of making money is a very collective essence, because the person who amasses the most wealth is the person who solves the most problems for the most amount of people. Like, you're literally providing to the collective in the most profound way possible when you truly generate wealth.
Yeah, that was G. Edward Griffin's amazing argument. I put this in one of my, I think it was chapter 5 of my Cult of the Medics, but I did an interview with G. Edward Griffin on Unenslaved. People can go check it out. And he broke down this difference of collectivism versus individualism. And he does it beautifully, where he basically was like, okay, if we understand that there's no such thing as a group of people, if we just think about it, right? There's people that go together and they wear the same costumes and they believe the same things to a certain extent. But the more again, it's like looking at that forest. You see a bunch of trees, they look the same, but the more you zoom in with that magnifying glass, you see, even within that collective, there's a world of differences between every person involved. And you can't get rid of this. This is what the collectivists hate. They just can't get rid of this thing. It's because it's a natural law. And he's like, so there is no such thing as a group. There's people that group together willingly, voluntarily to accomplish things, but that doesn't mean it's a group where it's like this little Borg hive mind, right? It still has individuals participating in those group activities. And then he's like, when I finally sussed out all these arguments and I read everything I could about capitalism and communism and socialism, and I studied history and I put it all together, he said, I realized that when the Marxist argument of the greater good for the greater number came from installing collectivistic governments and totalitarianism, really, he realized that no, it was the path of individualism, free markets, free trade, and freedom in general that was the best interest of the greater number. It was the best solution to the problem. It's just that it's never had that argument has never had the steam behind it in the way our institutions talk about it in schools and media. And also, when you bring in Michael's work on psychology, he would say you wake up to find out that the vast majority of humanity wants freedom from freedom, right? They dress and they put freedom in big capital letters all over the place, but when freedom's offered, they run as far away from it as possible. And that's why he spent so much time going into psychology and all that, because he was trying to figure out why. And so freedom is something you got to fight for. It's something you got to preserve. It's something that you will always be butting heads against people with, simply because of the fact that people would rather have the free ride. They would rather have the illusion of security. They would rather have some master teaching them and training them and grooming them and giving them a prescription for life, right? And yet there is this other side to us. So for those that would say, well, then individualism is against human nature. No, because we also have a history of people that were advocating for the individualist concepts, right? So we have both expressions in the human psyche happening, and we've done the experiment over and over again. Which principles applied to a society bring more abundance, more freedom, right? More authenticity, more sanity, versus what's the opposite of that. And so that's always interesting to me, is that the proof is in the pudding as to which one better reflects the natural order and which one just simply doesn't. And I think we've done enough experiments to figure that out.
The reason that individualism and capitalism, to me, is most reflective of the natural order comes down to the fact that capitalism and individualism are the only systems that honor the individual's right to property. And without the right to property, there is no right to life. If you're fending for your own survival, collecting food, whatever it might be, and then someone else just comes along and takes it, then you no longer have the right to life. And so one system honors the rights of property, one absolutely does not. And it's like, it's a very big bridge to cross to explain to people that, hey, actually, maybe capitalism is much more reflective of nature than anything else that is currently in existence.
I'm so glad you went here, because that is the next step. And I'll have to do another Rand quote on this because it's so good. She just wrote it better than I could have said it. But just to say that whole idea of how you are to be viewed as a sovereign entity and not as just, what does she call it? A sacrificial animal on the altar of the collective or whatever, right? That is something that I think people forget about. And so let me just read this quote and then I'll tell you what I was going to go with this. She's talking about individualism. She specifically says, individualism regards man, every man, as an independent sovereign entity who possesses an inalienable right to his own life and a right derived from his nature as a rational being. Individualism holds that a civilized society or any form of association, cooperation, or peaceful coexistence amongst men can be achieved only on the basis of the recognition of individual rights, and that a group, as such, has no rights other than the individual rights of its members. So if we understand, again, like what I was saying, that there's no real such thing as a group when defined like this, that any group that we want to talk about can only have the rights of what an individual has, it starts to blow the hole through a lot of the arguments we're seeing happen right now. And she goes, do not make the mistake of the ignorant who think that an individual is a man who says, I'll do as I please at everyone else's expense, because that's what everybody's going to say. An individual is a man who recognizes the inalienable individual rights of man, his own and those of others. So think about that. The people that go, oh, you're just a narcissistic asshole that are promoting individualism. No, it's, I recognize that it's no master above, no slave below. In the middle there is where the perfect freedom exists. Freedom from each other. Freedom from man being free from man, right? That's the thing here. And that my rights that I'm advocating for, like you're talking about property rights, Joel, what property other than your body do we need to start with? Like, let's go there. Where's the feminists with the my body, my choice? Well, they all shut the hell up when the COVID thing came out and they mandated these bio injections or whatever. That went out the window, which was interesting, right? So, but we have to be philosophically consistent when we talk about property rights. Property rights, there's a book you can get called The Territorial Imperative, which goes through a sort of, it comes from an evolutionary concept, but it's just the idea that like all of animals in the natural order and the natural kingdom, they all carve out property for themselves, and there's a reason for it. It's for the purpose of survival. That's why. That's why nature does that. That's why bears find their cave. That's why beavers build their dams and their little huts and their little, and why ants are making their ant hills and the whole thing. Like it's a survival imperative that starts with it, right? And then the property of your body. Who owns your body? Does the government own your body? Does the tribe, do your neighbors own your body? Right? Really, like think about it. Who owns your body? Right? So you start with the argument of property rights with your body, and then you go, okay, well, what if I want to build a domicile to protect my body from the natural world, from the elements, and from, people that want to kill me and steal my body from me and steal my life from me, right? Is your life your own, or is it owned by somebody else, right? And we keep going, and then you keep going into it. So, but just to get back to where she's going here, I just love that she's talking about how when they're saying, you're just a greedy narcissist because you're having, and she's like, no, I want the same for you as well. What are you going to do with that? So she goes, the mind, this is deep here. The mind is an attribute of the individual. There is no such thing as a collective brain. Now, there's such a thing as the illusion of a collective consciousness in that sense that we've sort of created, right? That you can merge with at a football game or in a vote, in a political thing or whatever, or in a cult. But look what happens when you do that. The reason that never works out is because of the fact that it's an illusion, right? The mind is an attribute of the individual. There is no such thing as collective thought. An agreement reached by a group of men is only a compromise or an average drawn upon by many individual thoughts. It is a secondary consequence. The primary act, the process of reason, must be performed by each man alone. We can divide a meal among many men. We cannot digest it in a collective stomach. No man can use his lungs to breathe for another man. No man can use his brain to think for another. All the functions of the body and spirit are private. They cannot be shared or transferred, right? So when you understand that what she's talking about are those natural laws that apply to human life, that you can't debunk that. You can't, that's just a fact of reality. Now we look at our systems of government and economy and property rights, and you see that the people that are advocating for collectivism are looking to steal property rights from you. Like here in Canada, acquiring land and property being bought and built by the government now, and then they're coming after your firearms and they're coming after all these things. And then what about the money that you've earned and what's been done to it by the fact that they're stealing 60 to 70% of your income through taxation in this country where I live. And, so that's your property that they're taking and reallocating. Who's doing that? A bunch of individual minds that are up there in the government or higher up that are deciding where to allocate those resources. And then if you say as an individual, hey, I don't want you to take my money and fund some crazy shit that I don't believe in. I didn't vote for this. I don't want you to take my property to do that. It's against my will. What do? They send men with guns to coerce you into doing it. So it's force. So the outcome of collectivism and this whole Marxist concept can only be achieved by coercion and force. That's why every time we run those experiments of having those principles in a society, it turns into coercion, force, and totalitarianism and genocide, right? Because it disobeys this law of property rights, starting, I think, right down to the cells of your own body that they would love to claim as theirs. But this is the principle. These are the renegade philosophers like, no, reclaim it. Reclaim your mind. Reclaim your body. Declare it as your property. Operate as such. The only thing is, here's the fine print. A lot of personal responsibility comes with this. A lot of hard work and effort comes with this. That's why you're going to have to call upon that heroism in order to be able to approach life like this. Because the problem is, we live in a crab in the bucket scenario where the minute you start trying to crawl up higher, you're going to be dragged down by people who will not do that, right? And of course, they're going to be espousing the ideology of collectivism because it relieves them of that personal responsibility. And that's why. So that's why I think that her work, and there's many others we could point to, is so valuable with this. And it absolutely shatters this myth that we should just go back to some collective tribal setting, trade and barter, and basically find more forms of totalitarianism. She's trying to ask you, here's what it takes to have freedom if you want it. And it's available to anyone that wants to take it.
Yeah. Beautiful, man. Well said, bro. One final cherry that I'd even place on that is like, when there's private ownership and there's responsibility, there is care. When someone owns something, they care about something. When someone owns a piece of land, then they're responsible for it. They make it beautiful. They make it grow. They make it amazing. If no one owns anything, then things become a shit show. Things become ghettos. Things become garbage ridden. Things become graffiti laden all over, you know? And so like private property is a beautiful thing in terms of it activates the care principle. I care about this thing now, so I'm going to maintain it. I'm going to make it grow. I want to make it beautiful.
Oh, I love that, because that hits on the incentive thing.
Yeah.
That the socialists missed. Or maybe they knew all the time because it was really just a big scam to acquire power and resources through inauthentic means. But that's another thing. Is the idea that what you're expressing there is this idea that, you know, you are responsible for that. And you're basically giving your responsibility away by saying that you don't, you know, that's not, you don't need private property because, of course, who wants to have to do the work to tend that garden, right? Like, it's better that we just do these public housing and have the government take care of everything for us, you know?
Yeah.
But then what the thing that misses from that mentality is, what level of soul activation and self-expression are you missing out on by skipping the work it takes to achieve greatness? This is why I was bringing that example of those kids I'm teaching them. And I'm teaching them these principles by saying, it's you. Yeah, it's me teaching you and me showing you and getting you to work and do all this. But in the end, it's you. You're the one that has to do the push-ups. You're the one that has to show up, motivate yourself. You're the one that's got to dust yourself off every time things don't work out. You're the one that has to go out there and win and achieve greatness, right? And when you do that and you do the work that's really hard, it's so incredibly hard to do it, but look at the result. Look at the result. And the result must be seen as more than just everybody clapping and cheering and you getting some medal or some ribbon. The result is you upgraded. You got some XP now. You're no longer the person you used to be. You're stronger. You're better. And it's this process that is going to lift you higher. And that's the real goal here, right? And if you don't have that self-ownership, we're talking about property. What about yourself? Your mind, your body, you're forging this, you're creating this every second of every day. Do you want someone else to take that process over for you? And if so, what would be motivating you to do that? Maybe a fear of failure, maybe a fear of success, who knows? Maybe a blending of both. But in the end, you have to claim your own territorial imperative. You have to claim your own property rights, even if the government's going to take your physical property rights away. The real property rights are the domain of your own mind, and to the extent that you have control over it, the domain of your body, right? And that's the gift you were given by nature. And so that's the natural principle. And that body and that mind is unique amongst the NPCs. It's totally unique. You have biologically, you're a human. You have a head, 2 arms, 2 legs, just like everybody else, but you are unique. And then you have the ability to become even more unique. That's why I love that old quote. It was like, you know, you're born an original, don't die a copy of everybody else, right? And I don't want to be a copy of everybody else. Why does that irk me when it's like you're just a copy of everybody else? Well, it's because it goes against my nature, and everybody else listening should feel the same way. You want to be who you are. And part of who you are is a process of discovery. So if you have all these systems in place blocking you from hitting those processes of discovery and self-actualization and learning about this principle, then yeah, you're a slave and you're never going to rise to the potential that you have. And that's why I have such an irk with these types of ideologies, because they're trying to bring out the worst and they're trying to devolve, man. They're not trying to uplift. They're not trying to inspire. They're not trying to bring real progress of anything. They're destructive concepts, and they're coming from self-destructive types of people, the psychological types of self-destructiveness. They exist all around us. Any one of us could fall into that self-destructive mindset at any time. So that's why the hero archetypes are so brilliant, is because they're there to remind you, yeah, the default setting is going to pull you back down, right? All the time. But if you tend your garden, if you get up every day and you apply yourself and you exercise your will to create something out of nothing and go through that process, the rewards are great, but it needs maintenance. Just like your lawn needs maintenance, just like your life needs maintenance, your property needs maintenance, your body needs maintenance, your mind also needs that maintenance. And it's going to be up against trust me, when you're in this mindset, you're a rare person in the world, because it's so much easier to not go on that journey and just default to everybody else. So to me, it's inspiring, these kind of concepts. That's why I love them. And when I practiced them, my life completely and totally changed, only for the positive.
David, I agree with you 100% here. And it's a gift to be alive and to embody these principles as best as we can. So, man, as always, thank you so much for coming on. Can you let everyone know? I mean, I think our audience knows how to find you, but let everyone know what you got
thanks,
going
bro.
on,
Appreciate
how
it.
they can find you, how they can support your work, etc.
Sure. Yeah. I'm we're working with Unslaved right now. Michael and I, we're making some upgrades. So doing lots of that. You can check all that at unslaved.com. And then I have my own Truth Warrior podcast that I still do. It's not been as frequent lately because I've just had so much going on, but I still, I have my podcast. You can get it on iTunes, Spotify, etc. And then my main production hub these days is Substack. I just really love the platform. I've got some premium content there. I've got boatloads of free content anybody can access. And I am working on, I'm kind of back into the comparative religion mythology research. I'm continuing my Bible Decoded series right now. I just finished editing the whole production. I just got to get it all done. And it's called The Body is the Tomb. And it's going to be a very, very interesting discussion over on my Substack. If you just look up Truth Warrior, you'll find me.
Awesome, bro. Yeah, we'll have all those links down in the show notes as well, and keep doing your thing. And yeah, man, for everyone else listening, we'll see you next time. Lots of love.
Am I here? Am I here? Oh, cool.
Oh, you are here. Okay. I know you broke out a little bit, but you're here.
I was cutting out during the outro. David, thank you so much, man. Absolute masterclass on individualism, heroism, capitalism, money. Like, just incredible value for anyone listening to this. You're an absolute legend, man. Love you, appreciate you, and I highly recommend everyone go check out David's work. We'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Thanks, bro. Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Wow. Like, everything that David kind of touched on right here, right now, really cuts to the core and cuts to the essence of what we believe leads one to greatness, leads one to heroism, leads one to living the life of their genuine desires. And much of what we touched on here also is what is at the core of Rise Above the Herd. And while our group coaching program, Rise Above the Herd, is finished after 12 rounds in that 10-week group coaching live call format, it is going to make a return in a more on-demand format at some time in the near future. So keep your eyes out for that. We're looking to make it more accessible and for it to have a much broader reach and a much broader impact on those that are genuinely interested in changing their life, claiming their potential, and rising out of the status quo and into the next level of their lives. So make sure you're subscribed wherever it might be at hereforthetruth.com and stay on the lookout for that.
And that wraps up today's journey. But hey, the truth train doesn't stop here. Every Friday, we drop little nuggets of wisdom straight to your inbox. We're talking mind-expanding ideas, heart-opening perspectives, and the kind of content that hopefully makes you go, whoa, I never thought of it that way. Our Friday drops like having coffee with that friend who always blows your mind. Except this friend shows up right on schedule and never asks to borrow money. So if you want to join our truth-seeking tribe, it's super easy. Just hop over to herethtruth.com/Friday and hit that subscribe button. No spam, no fluff, just pure unfiltered goodness delivered weekly. So if you're ready to make your Fridays a little more truthful, a little more inspiring, and a whole lot more awesome, your future self will thank you for this one. See you next time. And remember, we're always here for the truth, and we're always here for you.